the American Broadcasting Company, ABC.
But the new year did come, and I hope it's a good one for you.
Ron Cochran with the news has been brought to you by the ABC Television Network. The new Congress meets next Monday amid more than usual excitement. You may be sure there'll be a lot of changes on Capitol Hill, and there may be some surprises. For a well-informed preview of the situation, watch Issues and Answers this Sunday afternoon on ABC, when four prominent senators will discuss the new Congress.
Now from our ABC studio in New York, Peter Jennings.
Up 3, queuing.
Tornadoes usually kill slightly more than 200 people a year.
And ABC.
Peter Jennings with the news.
Peter Jennings with the news. A 30-minute summary of the day's events, brought to you Monday through Friday in color by ABC News.
American paratroopers got a first-hand look in Vietnam today at how the Viet Cong treat their prisoners. A paratroop company came upon a bamboo wall stockade in the jungle near Phuc Do.
Peter Jennings with the news has been brought to you by Great Day, a man's way to remedy grave from Clairol Research. Watch Combat at 7:30, 6:30 Central Time. Watch The Fugitive at 10, 9 o'clock Central Time. 2 gripping hours of action and adventure in color tonight on ABC.
Good evening. If this looks like a beautiful
The ABC Evening News with Frank Reynolds. Tonight, West Germany elects new president in West Berlin despite continued communist harassment. Vehicle designed to land astronauts on the moon receives its first space workout. The first of a special 2-part series on cigarettes and advertising on radio and television. And Frank Reynolds has some thoughts on President Nixon's news conference. Now, here is Frank Reynolds.
Good evening. Good evening from ABC News headquarters in Washington. I'm Howard K. Smith.
I'm Frank Reynolds in New York. These are tonight's headlines. Good evening from ABC News headquarters in New York. I'm Frank Reynolds. Howard K. Smith is on vacation. These are tonight's headlines.
Good evening. I'm Howard K. Smith in Washington.
I'm Harry Reasoner in New York. These are tonight's headlines.
Good evening from ABC News headquarters in New York. I'm Sam Donaldson.
Evening from ABC News, New York. I'm John Kelly. Tonight, in the latest series of public appearances, President Nixon flies to Nashville to dedicate the new home of the Grand Ole Opry.
I'm Ted Koppel in New York with the first edition of the ABC Saturday News. Here are tonight's headlines.
Good evening. I'm Bill Buttell, and this is ABC News New York. Good evening. I'm Bill Buttell, and this is ABC News New York. Good evening. I'm Bill Buttell, ABC News New York. Tonight in Moscow, President Nixon has gone on Soviet television to talk to the Russian people.
From New York, this is ABC News. Now, Harry Reasoner.
Good evening.
From New York, this is ABC News. Now, Harry Reasoner.
Good evening.
From New York, this is ABC News. Now, Ted Koppel. Good evening.
From New York, this is ABC News. Here now, Bill Buttell.
Good evening.
From New York, this is the ABC Weekend News. Here now, Bill Buttell.
Good evening.
From New York, this is the ABC Weekend News. Here now, Fahey Flynn.
How do you do, ladies and gentlemen?
Harry Reasoner. Barbara Walters. Bring you the news.
Good evening. Our major story tonight is that
Barbara Walters. Bring you the news.
Good evening.
Barbara Walters, Harry Reasoner, bring you the news.
Good evening.
Barbara Walters. Bring you the news.
Good evening.
This is the ABC Evening News. Tonight with Barbara Walters, Peter Jennings, and Howard K. Smith.
Good evening from Washington. Harry is on his way to Korea. Our top stories. President
This is the ABC Evening News with Harry Reisner and Barbara Walters.
Good evening. Barbara is on vacation this week.
This is the ABC Evening News with Harry Reisner and Barbara Walters.
Good evening. These are tonight's top stories.
ABC Evening News with Harry Reisner and Barbara Walters. And tonight, Howard K. Smith in Washington.
Good evening. Barbara is on vacation. Elvis Presley's family and friends and fans.
This is the ABC Evening News with Harry Reisner and Barbara Walters. And tonight, Ted Koppel and Howard K. Smith in Washington. Bing Crosby died today of a heart attack on a golf course in Spain. This is John Martin.
Terrorists in the Middle East and Europe set a Sunday deadline. More than 90 lives are at stake. I'm Peter Jennings.
President Carter and Panama's General Torrijos clarify U.S. rights under the proposed Panama Canal treaties. This is Sam Donaldson.
Farmers say they're going broke. They drove tractors to Amarillo to call attention to their plight. I'm Charles Murphy.
Good evening. Harry is on assignment in South Africa. Sad news. Bing Crosby died today while playing golf near Madrid, Spain. He was 73.
This is the ABC Evening News with Harry Reisner and Barbara Walters, and also Howard K. Smith in Washington.
Coal miners will strike at midnight, and the mines have already begun shutting down. I'm Charles Gibson.
Iraq refuses to sign the declaration of 888 as the Arab Summit Conference ends. I'm Frank Reynolds.
A hijacked plane, an explosion, and unrecognizable remains of people and planes. This is Ken Kashiwahara.
One of the country's top horse doctors is at the center of thoroughbred racing's biggest scandal in years. I'm Harry Reisner.
This is the ABC Evening News with Harry Reisner and Barbara Walters. And also tonight, Howard K. Smith and Frank Reynolds in Washington.
Heavy fighting rages in southern Lebanon that could hurt the Middle East peace talks. This is Bill Siemens.
Israeli Foreign Minister Dayan brings a peace plan to Washington. I'm Ted Koppel.
Kentucky Fire Marshal suspended a nightclub fire probe. This is Bill Stewart.
The Carter administration says race should be a factor in university admission policies. I'm Tim O'Brien.
Good evening. Barbara is on assignment in the Middle East and reports tonight that Israeli Foreign Minister Moshe Dayan met secretly over the weekend with Jordan's King Hussein.
This is the ABC Evening News with Harry Reisner and Barbara Walters, who is on vacation, and also Sam Donaldson in Washington.
Wholesale food prices shoot up again, disappointing White House economists. I'm Dan Kortz.
The unemployment rate hits its lowest level in 4 years. I'm Stephanie Levinson.
A Ford Pinto crashes and burns in yet another tragic accident. I'm Bettina Gregory.
2 convicted Vietnamese spies get 15-year prison terms. I'm Tim O'Brien.
Good evening.
Two leading Russian dissidents go on trial amid worldwide protests. Secretary of State Vance says the trials will aggravate relations with Moscow, but the SALT talks must continue.
From ABC, this is World News Tonight with Max Robinson in Chicago, Peter Jennings in London, Barbara Walters special reports, and tonight a comment from Howard K. Smith, and from our Washington desk, Frank Reynolds.
Good evening, and welcome to the first broadcast of the World News Tonight. Speaking for all the men and women of ABC News, I promise you an accurate, responsible, and meaningful report on events at home and abroad. We are aware of our responsibility to you, and we intend to meet it.
Terrorists in Nicaragua threaten to kill 3 hostages as the siege of the National Palace continues.
From ABC, this is World News Tonight with Max Robinson in Chicago, Peter Jennings in London, Barbara Walters special reports. Tonight a comment from Howard K. Smith, and from our desk in Washington, Frank Reynolds.
Good evening.
From New York, this is the ABC News Weekend Report. here's Tom Gerald.
Good evening. A Kennedy for President committee will be formally announced tomorrow in Washington, with Senator Edward Kennedy now reported to be anxious to begin his race for the White House.
From ABC in New York, this is World News Tonight, Sunday, with Sam Donaldson.
Good evening.
From ABC, this is World News Tonight, with Max Robinson at the National Desk in Chicago, Peter Jennings at the Foreign Desk in London. A special assignment report, The Hostages, Surviving Freedom. And at our desk in the new ABC News Washington headquarters building, Frank Reynolds.
Good evening. Again today, the United States tried to walk the thin line between friends of this country in the Middle East who are also enemies of each other.
From ABC, this is World News Tonight, with Peter Jennings at the Foreign Desk in London, Max Robinson at the National Desk in Chicago. A special assignment report, gun control, overseas, a world of difference. And from our desk in Washington, Frank Reynolds.
Good evening.
From ABC News, this is the Weekend Report. Now from our Washington headquarters, here's Tom Gerald.
Good evening. In Daegu, South Korea,
From ABC in New York, this is World News Tonight, Sunday, with Sam Donaldson.
Good evening. President Carter made it official today. Unless the Russians get out of Afghanistan within a month's time, he does not want the Summer Olympic Games held in Moscow.
From ABC, this is World News Tonight, with Peter Jennings, Max Robinson, and from our desk in Washington, Frank Reynolds.
Good evening.
This is ABC's World News Tonight. Here for Frank Reynolds in Washington, David Brinkley.
Good evening. The news this Monday night is that the U.S.
From ABC, this is World News Tonight, with Peter Jennings, Max Robinson, and substituting for the vacationing Frank Reynolds, from our desk in Washington, Ted Koppel.
Good evening.
This is ABC's World News Tonight. Here for Frank Reynolds in Washington, Peter Jennings.
Good evening. It's an appropriate day for someone normally based in Britain to begin an assignment at home.
Good evening. I'm Frank Reynolds, and this is World News Tonight. The President of the United States today celebrated a bipartisan triumph on Social Security.
From ABC, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings.
Good evening. It seems as certain as anything in East-West relations can...
From ABC News, this is World News Tonight, Sunday. Now from our Washington headquarters, here's Sam Donaldson.
Good evening. The city of Denver is breathing easier tonight.
This is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings. Tonight, reporting from Washington, Ted Koppel.
Good evening. That gas leak from a U.S. building.
From ABC News, this is World News Tonight, Saturday. Now from our Washington headquarters, here's Kathleen Sullivan.
Good evening, and welcome to the debut of ABC's World News Tonight, Saturday.
From ABC News, this is the Weekend Report. Now from our Washington headquarters, here's Tom Gerald.
Good evening from the mysterious...
From ABC, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings.
Good evening. All across America tonight, people who want prayer encouraged in the public schools are disappointed, and some of them are downright angry.
From ABC, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings. Tonight, reporting from Washington.
It is the worst disaster in the history of the American space program, and President Reagan has declared a week of mourning.
From ABC, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings. Reporting tonight from the Democratic National Convention in Atlanta.
Good evening. Before this night is over, the Democratic Convention will finally belong to the party's nominee.
From ABC, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings.
Good evening. In South Africa today, the tears of...
From ABC, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings.
Good evening.
From ABC News, The Weekend Report, here's Charles Gibson.
Good evening. The head of the NAACP said it today. Racism is alive and well.
From ABC News, World News Saturday, here's Barry Seraphin.
Good evening, and a new development tonight,
From ABC News, World News Sunday, here's Sam Donaldson.
Good evening.
From ABC News, World News Sunday. From New York, here's Diane Sawyer.
Good evening, Saddam Hussein.
From ABC, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings.
Good evening. We begin again tonight in the ruins outside Wake.
From ABC, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings.
Good evening. In some parts of the world today,
From ABC, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings, reporting from ABC News election headquarters in New York.
Yes, this is what it looks like. This is our election.
From ABC News, World News Saturday, here's Carol Simpson.
Good evening.
From ABC, this is World News Sunday. Here's Carol Simpson.
Good evening.
A new forecast about the economy may help Republicans and Democrats balance the budget in 7 years. An accurate forecast that warned of winter misery in much of the East, and the high-tech equipment designed to keep American troops safer in Bosnia.
From ABC, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings.
Good evening. We start tonight by confirming suspicions that this was going to be the week when Republicans in the Congress and the President. The 13-year-old schoolboys who were planning to blow up their school this weekend. They learned how to build a bomb on the internet. In hundreds of American communities, winter with a vengeance. The coldest weather since they've been keeping records. And the great American dancer, Gene Kelly, who died today in California.
From ABC, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings.
Good evening. We begin tonight with conspiracy to...
Finally pulled to safety after 2 days trapped in the rubble. Lining up by the thousands for a few good jobs. And a controversial new approach to treating problem drinkers.
From ABC, this is World News Saturday. Here's Catherine Cryer.
Good evening. In Seoul, South Korea today, a moment that thousands of rescue workers have been struggling for and millions of Koreans have been praying for.
President Clinton comes home from the hospital. Why these quick and easy lunches may cause health problems for your kids later on. And the musician who is teaching the critics something about audiences.
From ABC, this is World News Sunday. Here's Carol Simpson.
Good evening.
On World News Tonight this Tuesday, the Speaker of the House survives a challenge to his leadership.
The Speaker-elect, Newt Gingrich, representative from Georgia, and the Escort Committee.
Survival at sea on a life raft for a month. And on Solutions, the ultimate classroom. Teaching teenagers to save lives, theirs, and maybe yours.
From ABC, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings.
Good evening. It is still Mr. Speaker Newt Gingrich.
On World News Tonight this Saturday, the Kennedy family buries another son. The Pope brings a message of hope to a devastated region. And American balloonist Steve Fawcett avoids a major hurdle in his race around the world.
From ABC, this is World News Tonight, Saturday. From atop ABC News World Headquarters in New York, here's Elizabeth Vargas.
Good evening. On World News Tonight Tonight, this Sunday, Saddam Hussein sends his envoy to the United Nations with a list of demands, but the U.S. says no deal. It's going to be a long night on Capitol Hill. The House finally begins the debate on the fast-track trade bill. And Camelot under siege again. The author who was taking aim at the Kennedy myth.
From ABC, this is World News Tonight, Sunday. Sitting in for Carol Simpson, here's Elizabeth Vargas.
Good evening.
On World News Tonight this Thursday, the president stares at impeachment, the Russian president Boris Yeltsin, for treason, genocide, and generally ruining the country. The Senate may have a change of mind about gun control. The spy who published his colleagues' names, and the University of California wants to borrow your home computer to look for other life out there. We'll take a closer look.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings.
Good evening. We're going to begin in Russia tonight because Russia's on the verge of...
On World News Tonight this Wednesday, more of the country's best-known companies announce major cutbacks. Why are so many Americans losing their jobs? The battle against terrorism. What can go wrong when the FBI and the CIA try to share their secrets? One of the hottest trends in cosmetic surgery. How safe is it? An ABC News investigation. And gun makers making a big pitch to win new customers. Guess who they are after?
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings. Sitting in tonight, Charles Gibson.
Good evening. We are going to begin.
On World News Tonight this Wednesday, they have found the plane. They are recovering the bodies. Looking for support to pass the largest tax cut in nearly 20 years and not finding it yet. And growing up in the suburbs, if it's such a good place to raise the children, why are so many children unhappy about it? We'll take a closer look.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings.
Good evening. One of the most important questions
Tonight, this Saturday, freedom for America's POWs. Yugoslavia says they will be released to Reverend Jesse Jackson. Protesters target the National Rifle Association, meeting just miles from the scene of the worst school shooting in U.S. history. And in Littleton, a quieter anger. The crosses for the two killers are first torn down by the family of one victim, then replaced with smaller crosses.
From ABC, this is World News Tonight, Saturday. Reporting from Washington, Elizabeth Vargas.
Good evening. On World News Tonight this Sunday, the FBI links a suspect charged with one gruesome murder in Yosemite National Park to the murders of 3 other women. Millions mourn a king as a new generation of Arab leaders steps into the peace process. USA! 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 And an unforgettable victory for the young American who conquered cancer, and today, the Tour de France.
From ABC, this is World News Tonight, Sunday.
Good evening. I'm Carol Simpson.
On World News Tonight this Wednesday, Ford and Firestone get a going over in the Congress today.
Why do you keep telling the American public it's their fault, that they're inflating their tires wrong?
Why didn't they call back millions of tires sooner? Should the government's highway safety agency have acted sooner to protect the public? We'll take a closer look. The mafia snitch who talked to the government and then to us, and trying to talk to the world about your disappearing islands. It isn't easy being heard.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings.
Good evening. We're going to begin tonight with the
family.
From ABC, this is World News Tonight, Sunday. Reporting from Washington, Carol Simpson.
Good evening.
On World News Tonight, the Yugoslav leader Slobodan Milosevic is handed over to the International War Crimes Tribunal. A federal appeals court says Microsoft is a monopoly. The battle with government goes on. The government says hospitals must admit their mistakes publicly or lose their accreditation. And in recognition of Jack Lemmon, 50 years in Hollywood, some of the unforgettable roles.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings.
Good evening, everyone. We begin tonight with an event that many people in many places thought might never come.
On World News Tonight, the fire starter, the forest ranger who sparked the biggest blaze in Colorado's history, faces a possible 20-year jail sentence. Closing in on Iraq, momentum builds in Washington to topple Saddam Hussein. Corporate greed. As everyone else in the company was losing their shirt, these top executives divided up more than $500 million. A deadly dog owner's new day in court. The judge throws out a murder conviction against the woman whose dogs became killers. And a remarkable way that women are able to look and feel 20 years younger. A closer look at the benefits of weight training.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings. Sitting in tonight, Charles Gibson.
Good evening.
On World News Tonight this Saturday, Yugoslavia clears the way for Slobodan Milosevic to be tried for war crimes at The Hague. Accusations of racial profiling at the mall. Are some retailers targeting black customers? Barry Bonds and the long ball. After 15 seasons, he's on a blistering home run streak.
I can't explain it. I don't know. If I knew what I was doing, I would have done this a long time ago.
But can he keep it going? And hope for the California condor, conceived in captivity, hatched in the wild.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight, Saturday.
Good evening. I'm Juju Chang.
On World News Tonight this Sunday, scores of rivals line up in the California recall race as the incumbent fights back. Iraqis, fed up with power failures and fuel shortages, erupt in anger. Record heat brings Europeans to the boiling point. The tiny insect causing giant medical complications. And from Broadway and beyond, remembering legendary dancer and actor Gregory Hines.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight, Sunday.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Carol Simpson.
On World News Tonight, the man who led the search for weapons of mass destruction throughout Iraq says the intelligence was almost all wrong. He wants an independent investigation. John Kerry rolls out of New Hampshire. There were 7 contests for him and the other Democrats next week. That's a huge winter storm moving across the country, worse in some places, especially the ice. And home from the war, the joys and the challenges of being back.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings.
Good evening, everyone. We're going to begin tonight with a very tough and depressing assessment of U.S. intelligence.
On World News Tonight, the extraordinary efforts to stop bird flu at the border, the first new rules in 25 years, how it will affect millions of passengers on planes and ships. Exit strategy. The Pentagon's plans to reduce American forces in Iraq by 50,000. Iraqi leaders demand to know when the U.S. will be gone for good. In New Orleans, a search for 4,000 people still missing from Hurricane Katrina. How many of them are lost in shelters and how many are dead? Huge excitement over the new Xbox from Microsoft. Video games plus a billion-dollar bet on the future of entertainment. And Ted Koppel says goodbye to Nightline. 25 years, bringing people together and showing us the world.
From ABC News, this is World News Tonight. Reporting from ABC News headquarters, Elizabeth Vargas.
Good evening. We start tonight with...
On World News Tonight, a bad accident in New York Harbor. The Staten Island ferry crashes into a dock. Numerous people are killed. In the Palestinian territories, 3 American contractors working for the government are killed by a bomb. In the Kobe Bryant rape case, the prosecution struggles today on a question of credibility. And the baseball fan in Chicago who may wish that he'd stayed home. Just our luck, say the Cubs.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings.
Good evening, everyone. We're going to...
Tonight, line of fire. Members of a U.S. news team are among the casualties in Iraq today as Americans both celebrate and consecrate on this Memorial Day. The other war, a deadly accident involving a U.S. convoy, sparks Afghanistan's worst rioting since the Taliban fell. Miracle on the Mountain, exclusive video of the man left for dead on top of Everest, a remarkable survival story. And fan appreciation, he caught Barry Bonds' record-breaking home run without even knowing it had been hit.
From ABC News, this is World News Tonight with Charles Gibson.
Good evening. On Memorial Day, Americans pause to honor...
From ABC News headquarters, this is World News with Charles Gibson. Reporting tonight, Elizabeth Vargas.
Good evening. A devastating fire that...
Welcome to World News. Our bus tour has brought us tonight to Indianapolis. And in the headlines, global attack. Stocks slide again today despite an historic effort by the U.S. and 6 major industrialized countries to prevent a worldwide recession. On the bus, Barack Obama comes on board for a conversation about the economic crisis and the fears so many Americans are feeling. And gold rush. As the price of gold climbs, people looking for some quick cash are starting to sift through the family jewels.
From ABC News, this is World News with Charles Gibson. Reporting tonight from Indianapolis.
Good evening. We are in Indianapolis on the 3rd day of our bus tour.
From ABC News headquarters, this is World News with Charles Gibson. Reporting tonight, George Stephanopoulos.
Good evening.
Welcome to World News Tonight from Houston. In the headlines, a mass kidnapping in Iraq. Gunmen in government uniforms carry out one of the most brazen crimes since the war began. Car trouble. The leaders of America's auto industry go to the White House asking for help. They say what's good for General Motors and Ford and Chrysler is good for the USA. Mr. Chief Justice John Roberts tells us how he keeps order in the court, the Supreme Court. And pandemonium. What's black and white and bread all over? Pandas coming back from the brink of extinction.
From ABC News, this is World News with Charles Gibson. Reporting tonight from Houston.
Good evening. It was brazen, it was audacious, and it was chilling.
From the global resources of ABC News, this is ABC World News with Diane Sawyer.
Good evening, and it is so good to be here with you tonight.
Rising. And survivors, people who made it through the worst, to a reunion in the arms of those they love. And now we start our special coverage of disaster in the Pacific.
From ABC News headquarters, this is a special edition of ABC World News with Diane Sawyer.
Good evening. Today, 126 million people watched their world Friday as we bring you the lessons of all those royal women who traveled the same path as Kate will ride to the Abbey.
From ABC News, this is a special edition of World News with Diane Sawyer, the Royal Wedding.
And good evening tonight from London. Behind me is Buckingham Palace.
From ABC News, World Headquarters, this is ABC World News with Diane Sawyer.
Good evening. As we come on the air, it is getting dark. Of a mountain.
From ABC News, World Headquarters, this is ABC World News with Diane Sawyer.
Good evening to you on.
From ABC News, World Headquarters, this is ABC World News with Diane Sawyer.
Good evening to you on this Wednesday night.
On World News Tonight this Monday, the breaking news, the miracle at sea. A Marine helicopter crashes into the ocean carrying more than 24 U.S. sailors and Marines. Tonight here, the incredible rescue. Martha Raddatz standing by live. On this Labor Day, the severe weather hitting tonight, the tornadoes, high winds. This is the view through the windshield, just as millions head home after the holiday. Ginger Z is right here. An ABC News investigation tonight sneaking into America. Brian Ross on the 6,000 foreign nationals who arrived here and who have now vanished. And first day, America's future smiling back at us tonight.
Hi, David.
Kindergartners across this country with the one thing they're most excited about. It turns out we're all starting something new.
From ABC News World Headquarters, this is ABC World News Tonight with David Muir.
Good evening, and it is great to be with you on this Labor Day. And
this is ABC World News Tonight with David Muir.
Good evening, and it's great to have you with us here on a very busy Thursday night, and we begin with your... Some states starting to reopen without meeting the guidelines from the White House. In Georgia, where gyms, hair salons, and bowling alleys are set to open Friday, restaurants next week. The mayor of Atlanta tonight saying there is nothing essential about going to a bowling alley in the middle of a pandemic. Sickened, and we continue to follow the food farmers are being forced to destroy. Tonight, news on some of that produce and where it's now going. And we have reported so much here on the lungs tonight, the new data on who this virus targets, who is most vulnerable, the dangers to kidneys and the heart, and the factors that put you most at risk. And we do have news tonight on 2 pets that have tested positive for the virus here in the U.S.
This is ABC World News Tonight with David Muir.
Good evening. It is great to have you with us here on a Wednesday night amid the growing debate over the dangers of... Tonight, several developing stories as we come on the air. There is major news coming in right now involving the race for a vaccine and the daring rescues underway at this hour. At least 25 major fires across California tonight. 9 states with fires burning now, more than a dozen people still trapped. A wife waiting for her husband and boys to be rescued. National Guard and Navy pilots airlifting more than 160 people to safety. Choppers tonight flying through blinding smoke and flames. Families driving to escape. Fire lines on both sides of the road. Thousands of homes at risk as we go into the night. An entire town nearly burned to the ground. Also tonight, attendant to put on her mask during the safety briefing and what the airline is now saying tonight.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight with David Muir.
Good evening, and it's great to be back with all of you at home after this Labor Day holiday, and we do have several major developments.
A brief profile of the foremost television journalists in the world today. ABC News. We're changing the face of television news.